right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fearcast. This is the podcast dedicated to OCD and anxiety spectrum disorders and getting your life back. I'm your host, Kevin Foss, and I'm a licensed therapist specializing in OCD and anxiety disorders. And I want to thank you all so much for joining me for today's episode. This is going to be a fun episode today. I've got two questions I'm going to answer today. I've been doing two questions a couple of times lately, so I'm going to be going over those questions in just a moment. But first, I wanted to welcome any new listeners out there. So for those of you who are new, this is a question and answer based podcast. If you have questions about OCD or anxiety treatment, or you want to help a friend, or you have a question about that ridiculous thing that your therapist said, or you're trying to find a therapist, or you just can't find a therapist and you don't know how to handle these thoughts, these feelings, this anxiety, these obstacles, all this stuff, shoot me an email. You can go over to fearcastpodcast.com. You can find every episode of the podcast there. You can find information or ways to contact me to ask your question. You can click on the submit a question link and send a question to me there. You can click on the speech pipe button and you can send an audio question over there. Audio questions are going to go to the top of the list and be recorded earlier and faster than a emailed question, but all questions do get read, considered, and again will likely be put up on a future episode. You can also find me over at Instagram. I am Fearcast Podcast over at Instagram. You can send me a question over there as well. You can send an audio question there by sending me a DM, pressing the little microphone button, and I will get that question. So for those of you who don't know, I mean, for the vast majority of time, I've been doing this podcast through just audio means. So, if you're listening to me on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or any other ways that you can get a podcast, I've been doing them that way, and I've been releasing them that way. However, in the past, maybe a year, maybe less than a year, I've been really trying to put all these episodes out on YouTube as well. So not only can you listen to just the purely audio form that way, but you can also see my ridiculous face. And sometimes I'll put up a graphic or I'll put up an image on every question. If I'm having to read it, I will also put up the words to it so you can read it along with me. But the question or the videos are up there, and I'm trying to build that a little bit more and trying to get more people to watch. So I don't typically say this, but if you're watching over at YouTube or have a moment and can go over to YouTube, click that subscribe button. And I hate having to say that, but as you all know, the more subscribers, the more it pops up on algorithms, the more it gets out there. This isn't for anything other than trying to get more information out there and trying to get good information. I think good information, helpful information, and an outlet for people to ask questions and to get some answers to their questions. If you found this podcast, there was a way that you found it. Maybe it was through a Google search. Maybe it was through a friend who told you about it. Maybe a therapist or a group member told you about it. Maybe the algorithm sent it to you because of some of the other stuff. But that is oftentimes how this podcast information is going to get out. So if you have a moment, if you think this podcast is worthwhile, and I hope you do, go over there and click subscribe to that. As always, if you like the podcast, go over to wherever you get this or watching this, write a review, put a star number that you feel like is appropriate. But the most important thing about this is just that people are listening, people find it interesting, and people find it helpful. That's the only reason I'm doing this. And that's the whole reason it started, and that's the whole reason it's going to continue to go as it is. So that is my spiel for the day. I probably won't have a whole lot of other information other than that, or a whole lot of ways to bother you at the top of this, but we are going to just jump right in. Shall we? All right. So I've got two questions. The first is from Anxious Questioner. And the next one is from Diana. So the first question, I'll just read through this, and then I'll go through my answer, and then I'll get on to Diana's question. Hopefully these will be relatively quick. And I love both of these questions. They really outline some great questions, great ways that people have kind of there's kind of a sheepishness to some of them. There's kind of a worry about them. And what I love about them is that they're the ways that you can go about for these two questioners. The ways to go about doing these are I don't want to say relatively simple, but or relatively straightforward, but they really come through practice. And I want to give you all some things to think about, maybe some guidelines to consider if you are in a similar position. I really think that these are some steps that'll kind of get these two folks moving forward. All right, so let's start with this questioner. They say, "Hi, Kevin. Hope you are well, and thank you so much for doing the podcast. It is a great resource. Thank you for listening." All right. They say, "I was chatting with my friend last night, and we were talking about OCD. And she knows I have it, but we ended up talking in more detail about my theme." And they put parenthetically, HOCD, which is more commonly these days known as sexual orientation, or SOOCD. They said, but previously also TOCD, which is transgender OCD. It's probably with the T, transgenderism, trans OCD, whatever you want to call it. It's OCD about whether or not you are in fact a trans individual or will become a trans individual, or underneath it all, you get the idea. All right. They go on to say, "I explained to her that a lot of it is worrying about that that I really am a lesbian, and I'm just in denial, and I'm a homophobe and a bad person because I can't accept this truth. And instead, I'm like, oh, it's OCD. But also, then I worry people will think this about me too, and I don't want them to think that because maybe if they think it means something, and maybe it's more likely to be true." I explained the thoughts a lot in the OCD process, in the different forms, and I think she got it. But afterwards, I'm just so anxious. And like getting thoughts saying, she doesn't believe you, or she thinks that you're gay, and she thinks that you're in denial, and she's looking at you and saying she's so deep in the closet, and it's just sad. I said to her after I've spoken with you, she did not put quotes in this, and I should have gone afterwards and put the quotes in. There is no parentheses, no quotes. It is stream of thought. I'm having to work with it. We're working with it. Okay. I said to her after, "I've spoken with you about this, and I'll probably spiral and freak out and worry that you don't believe me or think that I am. And that's exactly what happened," end quote. And that's exactly what happened, as this has happened before with other people I've told. I'm regretting telling her and wishing I hadn't, because now I can't take it back. I'm just wondering, what should I do here, and how to deal with this aftermath of telling people? I know you don't have to tell people, but I'm trying to get more open and honest, and treating it a bit like an exposure, to be like I can't control what people think, but I'm not sure if it's something I should do. So I think this is a great question. So anxious questioner, thank you so much for sending this. And again, I think this is a tremendous consideration of a lot of people. So many people have had this worry about who to tell, what to tell, how should I tell, when should I tell, right? If you're getting involved with someone and you're starting to date them and you have OCD, or you have another subtype of OCD, or you have another anxiety disorder, or you have any mental health thing going on, depression, whatever it is. When should I tell someone? How should I tell them, right? Should I tell them on the first date? Should I tell them on the third date? If I tell them on the fifth date, is that too late? And it's like I've been hiding and holding this for so long. All these questions can come up for people, and it gets really stressful. But You're in a great boat. You're not alone in this. That a lot of people have these worries, and I want to offer some ideas on what you can think about as you're considering telling people, as you're kind of moving forward with this. But the first thing that I just want to say is in your question of like, what should I do about this? What was your question exactly? I'm just wondering how should I deal with this in the aftermath of telling people, right? Here's what you need to do. Nothing. Nothing. There's nothing that you need to do at all. Caveat, there's one thing to do. The one thing is resist compulsions. That's the most important thing that you can do. It's the most important thing that anybody who's trying to fight their OCD can do is to resist their compulsions. I often say, and you've heard me say it before, and I apologize, if you can do anything between doing exposures or doing response prevention, so exposure and response prevention, if you're to do one of those, do response prevention. Life is going to give you plenty of exposures. Response prevention is the one thing that's going to help with this the most. The response prevention, think about it as compulsion resistance. Stop doing the compulsions, right? What that's going to do, it's going to put you in a situation where you're now at risk of whatever that feared consequence is. But that's great, because now you can see what's actually going to happen, right? The safety mechanisms are down. The shield is down, right? The castle gates are open, whatever you want to call it, right? It's that you're now in that vulnerable position to actually see what the consequences are of whatever that thought is, whatever that obsession is, whatever feels dangerous, and you're going to see what happens. You know what's likely to happen? Nothing. Nothing. That's what's most likely to happen. Doesn't mean that nothing is in fact going to happen, because we'll have to see, though. What we find through doing exposures, right? And when I say doing exposures in this context, it means actively doing something to face your fears, right? So when we say exposure and response prevention, oftentimes what we mean is we're going to do an exercise where we are going to intentionally face something that you're afraid of and then resist that compulsive behavior. Now, life is going to give you all the exposures that you could ever dream of, right? And that's for every fear, every obsession. And that might just be you living your life and your brain gave you this thought. It might also be you're going to encounter stuff, right? We're going to see stuff on TV. We're going to hear stuff on the radio. We're going to hear stuff on songs. We're going to see stuff as we're just walking down the street, see stuff as we're just going through the supermarket trying to get food for dinner, right? Life will give you these exposures. Our job is to practice response prevention, being aware of the thoughts that are going through your head, aware of the patterns of these thoughts and how they try to pull you in. And as they pull you in, and as you get wrapped up into them through compulsions, how your world gets smaller and how that is not the direction that you want to go in. So the most important thing is to do response prevention and to resist those compulsions. That's the same thing said in a different way. All right. I heard it said recently, and I love this saying. So if something happened to you in the morning and you're still thinking about it in the afternoon, you're ruminating, right? So I think likely speaking, that you're ruminating about this event. It's to a certain degree understandable. You put yourself in a vulnerable position, which isn't a bad thing. Vulnerability is not bad. In fact, it's great that you're trying to use this vulnerability for your benefit and trying to reach out and connect with other people. But also remember that as you're vulnerable, your brain goes, that's dangerous. Don't do that. Why would we ever do that? Like, no, bad. We need to trust the process. And through that process of trusting other people with this information, you'll start to see what actually happens. Does anything bad happen, or does nothing bad happen? Or in fact, does something good happen? Do you grow closer? Does this friend, are you able to kind of grow your relationship? Are they able to meet you where you're at? Are they able to be a kind of change the relationship in a positive way, right? Can they be a greater ally to you in this process, right? What if it was a good change? I know our anxiety would never let us think that there could be a good change or good outcome to these things, but I mean, that's one of the options, right? So I wanted you to, so there are some compulsions that are coming to mind that I think might be helpful for you to reflect on and just kind of monitor to see if that's what's going on. So mental review, you kind of already talked about this. Mental review is replaying a previous event to kind of find potential wrongdoing, right? Oftentimes in mental review, you might also fall victim to mental rehearsal, which is then kind of playing out future situations to plan out what you might say and how you might say it and what situations might occur and how you might respond to that, so you can kind of practice what you'll say to kind of make sure that nothing bad's going to happen, and so you can kind of ensure an optimal outcome, right? Emotional checking oftentimes comes with that. That's where you're starting to imagine these scenarios, and you're trying to evaluate your feelings to see, like, all right, does that feel right? Does that feel scary? Does that feel good? And you're using those feelings as a guide as to whether or not you should or shouldn't say those various things. These are pitfalls. You never know what's going to happen. Inevitably speaking, if you thought about 8,000 potential outcomes, it's the 8,001th thing that is going to happen to you. So one of the things we need to do is to recognize that most of the time, our ruminating and our plotting and our planning and our stressing ourselves out is going to get us nowhere, other than more stressed out probably. So mental review, emotional rehearsal, or mental rehearsal, emotional checking. The other couple of things, mental avoidance or thought suppression, that may be going on. That's that mental compulsion where you're just going like, nope, not going to think about it, not a thought, blah, blah, blah. And we try to like shove that thought out of our head. There's also a compulsion in the sense that we're trying to force something out that is feeling uncomfortable. That ain't going to work, right? It falls victim to the don't think about the white elephant approach. So for all of y'all listening, don't think about the white elephant. How's that going? I bet bad. When we say don't, or when we say stop thinking about something, our brain goes, stop? You mean this? Stop thinking about this thing right here, this thing right here, this scary thing? Don't think about that? Okay, don't think about that. Are we still thinking about this? Because I don't think we're thinking about this. We're thinking about this, right? And it just keeps going back and back and back and focusing on that thing. Your brain will eventually shift onto something else when we let it. When we let your attention refocus onto life, or let your attention get back to life itself. But we have to let go of the process of holding on to it, or the process of trying to shove it out, right? It's just exhausting. Another one that's really common is scenario twisting, which is changing the details of your memories, changing the details of what you remember, what you did or said or acted and what they did. And if you change those details, then you evaluate, again, how you're feeling about it and to see if those changes would affect what is happening today and then what's happening in the future. More getting wrapped up in things that we have no control over, right? So, as you were telling me this story, it reminded me of an old joke from a comedian named Norm Macdonald. So he's an older comedian. He used to be on Saturday Night Live. His comedy is not for everybody, but he has a very dry joke that is kind of told conversationally. Go Google Norm Macdonald deeply closeted person joke. Right? Go check that out. That's what's coming up for me. Basically, the idea is he says, hi, I'm a deeply closeted person. So the interviewer says, well, if you're deeply closeted, then that means deep down you're admitting that deep down you're gay and you know that you're gay. And he goes, no, I'm not gay. Didn't you just hear me? I said I'm deeply closeted. I'm not gay. I'm just very deeply closeted. But I'm straight, but very, very deeply closeted. And they go, but you're gay? And he goes, no, how dare you make such accusations? Anyways, I feel like this is what OCD does, and I especially with sexual orientation OCD, is it like gaslights you into thinking that you're freaking yourself out. All right, I think it's funny. You may not think it's very funny, but you might. You might go, yeah, I get that. I get that voice. All right. So I wanted to share some ideas on some things that you can do. Certainly there are some exposures that you can do in this process, but you've already heard me say there ain't nothing that you need to do. But some people will want to share information about themselves, and especially as you grow in relationships with other people, if you're dating, married, or if you have, friends or family that you want to share this with, or you want to build in relationship, as we grow in relationships with each other, we share information with each other. We talk about what's stressing us out. We talk about the stuff going on in our life. And this may be one of those things that you want to share down the line. So I wanted to just kind of give a rough outline of some things things that you could think about. And I've talked about these before on the podcast, but I think they're worth repeating. And maybe I haven't talked about them in a while, but so these are kind of some general rules for sharing this, sharing that you have OCD, sharing that you have generalized anxiety disorder, sharing that you have, a phobia. So number one is I always want, when I'm talking with folks in my office, I always ask, like, what is the reason for sharing? Why do you want to share this information? Is it for reassurance? Are you trying to share so that you can get validation or maybe sympathy from that person, right? Are you trying to manipulate that person to, taking it easy on you, trying to manipulate that person into, in a backwards way to try to say, like, oh no, you're like, I don't think that you're gay at all. I think you're totally straight. Like, I've never asked that question. I've never even thought about it. It's the last thought on my mind, right? Are you trying to tell this person so they can, so that they can accommodate for some behavior, right? So that they can, if it's contamination, maybe they're more likely to open the door, and you've seen that in the past. So you're trying to share this with that person. So they're going to open the door for you. They're going to give you a little bit more reassurance than they normally would have, or that the therapist normally would have encouraged, right? Now, those are some maybe less good reasons. Are you sharing it for closeness? Are you sharing it for support? Are you sharing it so that the other person can say, gosh, that really sucks. How can I encourage you? How can I support you in the work that you're doing, right? What often can happen is that when people share this information about themselves, it can open the door for the other person to share maybe their own struggles, and that you can serve as encouragements to one another in that process. I've talked with clients, and I've shared these stories before, that one person, there was an example of one person who had shared that they had OCD and that they were very open about it. They were very confident with themselves in the process. And it gave the person that I was working with the encouragement to also verbalize it, instead of just like shoving it down, stuffing it down, and pretending like it wasn't there, or feeling as if it's something that ought to be stigmatized or that made them less than. In fact, by sharing it, they felt like they could take some ownership over it, that it wasn't a big deal or a disqualifying characteristic, and that's a wonderful thing. Another thing to think about is we want to share with safe and vetted people. What that means is we don't need to share with just anybody, right? We don't need to share, we don't need to put it up on Facebook. You don't need to tell every single person you go by. You don't need to go to a job interview or a first date and say, hey, my name is so-and-so, and I have OCD, and I constantly think about decapitating babies. But anyways, what are you going to get for dinner? We test this information out, right? For a lot of people, this information is going to be very private, and it's going to be very, it's going to be intimate information, right? Close to who they are. So we want to be able to share this information with people who we know are going to be soft places to land, that are going to be encouraging people, they're going to be supportive people. And we test this over time, right? When we first meet someone, we're sharing real surface level things, right? What's our name, what we do, where are we from, like what's our favorite hobbies? Hey, what do we think about the weather, right? Basic stuff. And then as we get further in relationship with this person, we might share a little bit deeper information. And as we test that out to see how they respond to it, maybe they respond in a safe way, a positive way, in a way that seems kind and loving, and not judgmental or not rejecting or minimizing. And we go, okay, maybe they've earned maybe a little bit to go a little bit deeper with us, and maybe they get to know us a little bit better, and we get to tell them a little bit more about what we fear and what we value and what we hope for and our dreams, and we test to see how they respond to that. Are they going to go like, oh, that's your dream? Well, that's a stupid dream. Like, that's a disqualifying response, I think, right? And then that they haven't earned the right then to move further. Right? If at the very surface level you go like, if actually as you're kind of moving down, maybe you've said like, oh, I've had some, I've had some anxiety in the past, right? Not saying that, I've been, suffering from, OCD or suffering from, severe social phobia for, a decade or two. Maybe you said like, I've got some anxiety. If they go like, anxiety is a figment of your imagination. You just need to eat more broccoli, and you need to, take this supplement. I don't know, whatever it is. that may be one of those disqualifying responses, in which case, I know for me, I'm probably not going to be sharing much more. I'm probably not going to be sharing deeper information about myself because I don't think that they've earned it, because I don't think that they are a trustworthy person with that information, and they're going to handle it poorly. But as we go, we can share that, and we can share more and more. And similarly, another rule I think is share information commensurate with their trustworthiness, right? As I said, like, you can start with the basics. I've had anxiety in the past. Okay. Like, I might share, like, let's say if I was sharing information about my health, right? I would say, oh, I've had, I grew up as a sick kid, or I've got some health issues here and there, right? That might be my very shallow, very, very surface level way of explaining what I've got. And then I might go, well, I've had lung surgery and I've had sinus surgery a couple of times, and I'm better now, and like, thanks to that, I'm doing pretty well, right? And then, the way they respond, I might go a little bit further and tell them that, I was born and had pneumonia immediately, and I was in the hospital for 11 days in an incubator, right? Like, more and more information. Now, as I get closer with this person, I may get further and further into other elements and how it affects me and all that stuff. But I'm not going to just share this with anybody. And I'll say this, and perhaps this is to one of my my other points, is that we get to we have the information, and I get to control how much that I share, right? You get to control how much that you share as you're moving on, right? Now, this information for me is something that, about my health, is something that I'm comfortable obviously sharing with, right? You're not twisting my arm out there to get this information out. But some people out there are going to be just really open with their OCD diagnosis, and they're going to tell everybody from the jump. And that's great. Like, if that's for you and you feel comfortable with that, great. For everyone else out there, if you're not, that's okay too. You can share what you feel comfortable with. You start small and you share more as you get closer, right? Now, I'll also say this, to the point of you are the person who gets to control the narrative. You are the person who gets to tell how much information, what kind of information you want to share. The other person does not get to demand more information or specific information that you don't want to share. If they're asking for deeper and deeper and deeper information and you're not ready to share, you don't have to share it, right? You can shut that conversation down. You can just stick with the surface level stuff, like, it's just anxiety, it's not a big deal. You can also lie to them. If they are pushy and you need to get out of that conversation, lie your pants off to get out of that conversation, right? If you don't want to share that you have OCD and you're thinking about decapitating babies, you can just go like, oh, it's social anxiety, and I just think about like, oh, what if my teeth fall out, or what if I trip as I'm walking down the street? Oh, anyways, it doesn't matter, right? But you get to control how much you share, and no further. Now, I'd encourage, but the asterisk to all this is your doctor, your psychiatrist, and your therapist. Tell them the information, right? You don't need to hold back, right? They've heard it. Share this information with them. My last point is we also need to accept the powerlessness over the information once it is out. We cannot put the cat back in the bag. We cannot close up Pandora's box. The information's out there. My sharing what I just shared about my health issues is now out there. And I cannot control what you all do with that information. I can't control what you think of me, whether or not you think that I'm broken or weak, or it's going to add judgment, or it's going to add rejection, or it's going to add an undue amount of empathy and sympathy that I may or may not be called for. I have no control over that. All I can do is control what information I share, and then it is up to the other person. We as people then need to accept that reality. And we accept that reality by seeing what's going to happen. We throw it out there and we wait and see. But remember, theoretically, we've been testing that with this person, right? In small bits, in fits and starts, and small bits of information, and we see how they respond, and we see what's going to happen. Same thing is that hopefully, as we've shared that we shared little bits of information or shallow bits, we wait, and we see how things go, and we see how the relationship does or doesn't change in a positive or negative way, and then we see if we want to move further. But that's also another further test to see what's going to happen and how we can sit with the powerlessness of just the shallow bits of information, right? So I think I'll stop beating this dead horse with this example, but those are kind of my overall general guidelines on things to think about as you're moving forward in relationships with people and what you want to share or not want to share as you progress. So lastly for you, anxious questioner, I want to just give you some exposure ideas. Right. So there's not a ton that I want to offer other than, practicing response prevention. And maybe we could talk about, if you were in my office, we'd be talking about acceptance exercises, maybe some more ACT-focused things. But maybe within that, I want you to practice a time will tell perspective. What that means is we're sitting and we're waiting and we're watching to see what's going to occur from the thing that we did. Now, I love this approach for a lot of things. It's kind of saying, well, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to, it's like, think about like an email. I'm going to press send on it, and it's out in the universe. And I'm going to wait to see what happens with it. Is it going to explode in my face? Are positive things going to come from it? I don't know, but we have to wait and see. And the question then is, well, I'll see something in the future, maybe, that will tell me the outcome of it. Good, bad, otherwise. Or maybe nothing. But what am I going to do in this moment before that thing happens, before the outcome happens, before the event happens? I need to occupy my brain with something. I need to focus my brain on something and my efforts and my attention and all this stuff. And it's the wait and see. We'll see, right? So we give that up, and that's going to feel uncomfortable, right? Other phrases that can be helpful in this is you can say, and this is kind of accepting the maybe part, right? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Maybe they think this, maybe they don't. It's possible they think this about me. You can respond to yourself with, it's possible they do think this about me, and that might feel uncomfortable, but it's true. It's possible they think this about me, right? You can say, hey, I don't know what they think. It's true. You're acknowledging a fact. You don't know what they think, but it doesn't mean that they think good things about you or they think negative things about you. It's not reassurance to say, but they still love me and they're kind and they're good people, and I know they're going to be kind and good. Or we can't say, well, I know they think this about me. I know they think that I'm gay. I know they think that I'm trans. I know they think that I'm X, Y, or Z. We don't. Unless they say it, we don't know. Another one, this may change our relationship forever, but we'll see. Right? We're back to that, but we'll see. So this may change our relationship forever. And that might be even harder, because isn't that one of the fears? Like maybe this will change, irrevocably change, right? It will change it and I can never go back. Maybe. But what if you could never go back in a good way? That's still a possibility, right? But either way, between now and the future, we'll have to see. And we'll just keep building this relationship and seeing where it goes. This all fits within non-engagement responses, right? You can say, boy, this really makes me feel uncomfortable. Oh, I hate this. It's true. Like, you don't like the feeling, right? You can say, I don't like it. You can say it's uncomfortable. Man, you could say, I really want to ask the question. I really want to get reassurance. I really want to text them to see what they think. Yeah, you do. You do want to acknowledge that, or you acknowledge it. You do want to send them that text. We don't need to send it. We can just say, man, I really want to do this. It's like, it's akin to, think about it as like if you're on a diet and you're trying to cut out, fried foods or pizza or all of those things. And, if you're just on a specific kind of diet, you can say, man, I really want that, I really want that pizza right now. Man, you know what I want? I want 17 pizzas right now. It's true. You do want 17 pizzas. But are you going to torture yourself by continuing to ruminate about it, continuing to think about it, to get that pizza and put it right up on your face and just smell it and think about how good it would taste? You're torturing yourself, right? You can say, man, I really want that pizza. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go eat that broccoli, or I'm going to go eat those meatballs or the chicken wings, or like something else that's more aligned with your diet, whatever it might be, right? So we can redirect to something that's of greater value, but we can still acknowledge the thought that's there, right? We can acknowledge also the potential feared outcome. Boy, wouldn't it be terrible if it screwed up our relationship forever? Yep, it would. But we don't need to further dwell in it, right? Again, it's looking at that pizza and smelling it and just like touching it and like getting close to your friend and just go like, tell me how it tasted. Was it hot? Well, how did the cheese taste? Like, we're not dwelling in it, right? That's maybe the weirdest thing I've ever said on this podcast. That's not true. definitely said weirder things. But those are some things I want you to think about as you're progressing through this and as you can start to challenge yourself. Really practice wait and see. This person sounds like a trustworthy person. And as you are doing exposures towards vulnerability, take that risk and move forward with it. All right, let's get on to the next question. So the question is a little bit shorter. So this is from Diana. She says, what can I do to overcome the lies my mind keeps telling me? I grew up with attachment trauma from my family, which I recently got diagnosed with and started therapy. I always struggled with finding real confidence as I grew up adapting to my surroundings. Long story short, a year ago, I had a bad psychosis due to cannabis. I developed intrusive thoughts and moral and religious scrupulosity. I basically was believing in thought broadcasting, and that my thoughts or the way my body felt would make a person act a certain way or feel the same sensation. It's getting better now as I'm fighting the illusion, but I can't seem to let the subject or my obsessions go. I can't even look at a person or look at a person walking the same way as I am, or sit close to someone on the bus without hating myself or even thinking those thoughts about them. And I'm unsure what to do different. How can I soften my heart and let it go? So Diana, I really appreciate this question. So these are hard situations to be in, and I'm sorry that you're having to go through it. So one thing I will say is, cannabis, they do show cannabis can, not always, but can be a instigator to a psychotic episode. It can also sometimes be an instigator to, cannabis can, or other highly stressful situations, can be an instigator or I'm going to say an instigator to other mental health conditions, right? So it could be one of the things that put you in a headspace that was going to trigger an anxiety disorder, OCD in this case, but you may have been going to manifest that at some point anyways. It might have just been cannabis had accelerated that. Now, cannabis, for folks who don't have OCD, it can instigate a psychotic episode for some. I keep having to say this because I'm not trying to be a narc and say stop smoking weed or chewing on gummies. What I'm trying to say is there are effects and there are some things that can happen for some people. So proceed cautiously. And if you're already smoking weed, if you're listening to this super high, and nothing's happening, mazel tov, go live your dream. I don't know, whatever you want. So just bring that up. That I'm also saying, Diana, it's not the craziest thing I've ever heard. So what I would encourage you to do is go talk to a psychiatrist and discuss the episodes and potentially look into medication if you haven't already, and willing to bet you have. All right, you said phrases like soften your heart. This sounds very religious, and probably because I hear stuff like that in church. All right. With soften your heart, it's not a matter of softening your heart as if you're hardened heart, as if you're rebellious against this, as if you are somehow in sin and you need to soften something or repent of something, and at that point you will let it go. Now, it's not to say that there aren't things to repent of, and I'd encourage everybody, go check out church. It's worth it. It's fun. It's weird, sure, but so is everything else. But it's not a matter of softening it and then let it go. It's about practice to see that you can handle the uncertainty, right? It's about pushing through. And in fact, I would say harden yourself, harden your tenacity to push through those thoughts and to push through that fear that maybe this thing is going to happen. You emailed me, remember, you messaged me and said, hey, Kevin, the OCD and anxiety guy, I think that I've got an OCD and anxiety thing. Great, I agree with you. And I would encourage you to treat it like it's an anxiety disorder. If it is, remember, you've got these two sides of your brain, this very anxious, irrational side, and this very logical, rational side. You've got both, right? The person who's just straight up psychotic only has one side, right? They've got that fear side, all those things are facts. You've got both. Utilize your rational side and say, I'm going to act as if it is an anxiety disorder. And if it is, I'm going to do X, Y, or Z, and I'm going to stop doing A, B, and C, right? One of those things I want you to start doing is to resist hating yourself for thinking these thoughts, right? you don't need to take ownership over these thoughts as if the thoughts truly reflect something about you or about your character or about what you want or don't want in life, right? Think about actors in this way. It's an actor's job to pretend to be somebody else, to act in a way that is outside of their character, most likely speaking, right? To maybe say things that they wouldn't normally say, to treat others as they wouldn't normally do. We wouldn't watch someone on screen who's saying things and all of a sudden think that that is actually reflective of who they are. We would say, oh, they're pretending to be that, right? We wouldn't say that an author is, we wouldn't say that J.K. Rowling is in fact practicing witchcraft because she is imagining and writing stories about witchcraft. She's the author of Harry Potter, in case anybody noticed, or if anybody didn't know. But we're not saying that she is this because she's thought about it. We're not saying that Stephen King necessarily is a horrible, violent person because he's thought about those things. These are thoughts that go through their minds, and we respect it. We may be saying, like, when's the next book coming out? I'd love to read more about it. For you, I want you to stop. I want you to take a break from hating on yourself. Instead, I think that one of the ways that you can combat that is through building an understanding of what the disorder is, of what OCD is, of what thoughts are and aren't, and have a generous compassion towards yourself for having this disorder, right? So one thing I was reading about in this is that one thing that was coming to mind is it sounds as if you're treating yourself as if these thoughts are facts. And they're not. These are thoughts, and these are thoughts that are amplified. Those thoughts are just things that go through one's heads, but it doesn't reflect exactly who you are. It doesn't mean that they are you. They are your thoughts. They are thoughts that pop into your head, right? And it's a disorder, right? Your brain is grabbing onto it more. Your brain is producing more of these thoughts. It's harder to let these thoughts go. These are common themes for people with OCD. So I want you to remember that this is hard. Similarly, folks who have coprolalia, especially, kind of think about like the very stereotypical example of Tourette's disorder, where someone is like uncontrollably swearing, right, or saying slurs they ought not to say. They don't want to say it, and it doesn't reflect who they are. And in fact, it reflects the opposite of who they are. They are a good and kind and loving, caring person, but there is this like compulsion to say it. And again, this is my very amateur understanding of it, but I've seen it. And again, the folks who have this are it's not because they desire to say it. They have the impulse to say it because it's exactly what they don't want to say, right? So really building an understanding of what OCD is and isn't, I think will help with this to continue to show this is OCD, not truly who you are. So let's do different, right? So number one, I want you to practice building a tolerance to the discomfort of that situation, right? And again, this comes through practice, right? And perhaps medication as well. That might be a helpful aspect with this. But practicing accepting the feelings and treating them as the feelings, right? So noticing how they exist in your body. Where do you feel it in your body? Does it have any movement? Does it have a shape? Does it have a rhythm to it? Does it have a texture to it, right? What does your body feel like when you're in that uncomfortable position? But also notice them going away. Over time, you'll notice that feeling starts to pass, or it shifts and morphs into something entirely different. You can reflect on this pattern and to notice the temporary nature of them, and to notice that you continuously go back to who you are, your typical stable character, right? Notice that they're there and that they will go away. And you can utilize that confidence. You use that confidence in the trajectory to allow those feelings to be there and allow them to pass. So here's some exposure ideas, right? So you can practice this. And again, this is stuff that I hope you're working with a therapist on this, but if you're not, or you can't find one, or you can't afford one, or you're in a place in a world where it's just damn near impossible to find someone, here are some ways that you can practice this. So at home, you can practice writing down these thoughts every day, writing them down, and it will feel uncomfortable. And you just write them down as facts. These are the thoughts in my head. It might be specific words that you write them out 100 times every day. Then it might grow into phrases, and you write those every day. And then you might upgrade, like once the anxiety starts to come down by at least half of that exercise, then you move on to drawing a picture of your thought. You draw it every day. You draw it 5 times, 10 times, 100 times a day. And the anxiety of that will start to come down. And then you're going to post all those pictures and post those words and phrases all on the wall, all over your room. And it's going to feel like you can't escape from it, and you can't, and good. And it's going to feel uncomfortable, and eventually you're going to get used to it. Then you can intentionally look at people in the eye. Start going out in your community. Now, you can even start slowly. Just look at pictures. Look at the people in the pictures. Look them in the eye. That might feel uncomfortable. You're going to practice doing that over and over and over again until that gets easy. And then you move on to videos, and then you move on to maybe friends, family, your therapist. You look them in the eye. And you just tolerate that for a period of time. If you want to pause the video, here, I'll do this. Practice looking at me like that. Here, I'll do it again. I'll do another feeling or another face. How about this? All right, practice all that. Then you can practice walking around people in real life and just walking by them and say, I'm going to look at every single person. Or hit a number. I'm going to look at 50 people directly in the eye, and they may not look at you, but you're going to try looking at them. Eventually that feels more comfortable. Then you move, you can slowly move up towards, towards having these thoughts. Now, this is exactly the same with sitting next to people, okay? Start small, start working your way up. Now, another thing you can do with this is you can test this fear out. Now, this feels uncomfortable, and this isn't for reassurance. It's going to feel uncomfortable because you're essentially saying, all right, my brain says I'm thought projecting, or I'm, what word do you use for it? Oh, this is useless. I can't even find it right now. Essentially projection. Oh, a thought broadcasting. There you go. So it's basically like I'm having this thought and I'm projecting it to somebody else. All right, if that's the case, great. Let's test that out. Sit next to someone and say, I'm going to give this person an innocuous thought. All right, I'm going to think an image of a snake wearing a vest. I think it's so hard. And then I'm going to look at that person and I'm going to go like snake in a vest, snake in a vest, snake in a vest, and see if they respond to it. And it's an innocuous thought. It doesn't mean anything, right? And you can just kind of giggle to yourself, that you're making them have this thought. Maybe it's going to be a beaver with an elephant nose. I don't know, something silly. Maybe it's going to be an image in your head of President Obama as a white guy or President Trump as a black guy. All right, I'm thinking about that and what that would look like. And I'm going to project that to the other person. And it's going to feel wrong and weird. And you're going to tolerate the discomfort of those things. You can even project putting out a song. Like, I'm going to think this song and I'm going to try to project it. And again, all this may feel silly and it may feel, or it may feel really scary. But again, part of this is practicing into seeing what the effect is. And then you can move up and up and up to those scary or offensive or blasphemous thoughts, as I anticipate are most likely to be there. But it comes slowly and it comes through patience and practice, right? So let's see here. Yeah, I think that's probably it. I'm trying to look through my notes on this and see if there's anything else that I really wanted to add. Yeah, I would say a lot of this is practice compassion on yourself and treat this as an OCD and anxiety disorder as it is. Treat it as if it is. And if it is, take the risk. Say it. Acknowledge it. Have the thought. Let yourself have it. Let yourself imagine that you're projecting to somebody else. Think about a feeling that you want to project to somebody else, right? Think like this is, I would eventually probably have someone in my office do this. Like, think love, or think like sexual arousal towards someone. And I'm going to think this, and I'm going to think that into that person, and I'm going to make them feel that uncomfortable feeling. And it'd just be this silly thing that you can do, but it comes to practice. So, all right, Diana, anxious questioner, I'll let you all go here, but thank you so much for these questions. Thank you, everybody out there, for the questions that you send in. Again, this podcast runs on your questions. If you have questions, send them on in. If you think I got something wrong and you think I totally miffed it or hoofed it or woofed it or whatever I did and got it wrong, tell me as well. I want to grow and change as well in this process. So send it in to me. Again, you know how. Go to Fearcast Podcast. Go over to Instagram. You can email me at questions@fearcastpodcast.com if that's even easier. If you want me to trim or get rid of the mustache like this, tell me. I probably will ignore you. But if you have a moment, go over to YouTube, click on the subscribe button, and help me boost those numbers. It helps in the algorithm, helps more information get out there. So until next time, everybody, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Fearcast. If you would like your question answered on a future episode, please click on the Submit a Question link at fearcastpodcast.com. If you would like your question answered sooner, please send me a recording of your question to questions@fearcastpodcast.com or by sending me an audio message through Instagram by DMing me at fearcastpodcast on Instagram. If you like the Fearcast, please write a review on your podcast platform of choice. Please remember that the Fearcast is not a substitute for psychotherapy. If you need a little bit of help in your recovery, please go over to fearcastpodcast.com and click on the Find Help link, and there's going to be some information for you there. So until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye.